Let's jump into an incredible story about integrity under fire. I mean, think about it. 4 young guys ripped from their homes and thrown right into the heart of a global superpower, and this place, it had a whole system designed to strip them of everything they were. We're going to see how they handled it.
And really, that's the big question, isn't it? It's a challenge that, honestly, never gets old. We're about to see how a few key choices they made in a foreign court didn't just shape their own lives, but actually sent ripples through history.
All right, so let's set the scene. This is a huge moment in history. The world map is literally being redrawn. Jerusalem, the very heart of the kingdom of Judah, has fallen, and its best and brightest are being rounded up and deported to the massive, growing empire of Babylon.
And look at how fast all of this happened. In just a handful of years, Nebuchadnezzar goes from crown prince to the guy who crushes Egypt's army, becoming the new top dog. He then turns his sights on Jerusalem. After a rebellion, he comes back in 618 B.C.E., and the city has no choice but to surrender. But this wasn't just about winning a war. It was the start of a whole new battle for the souls of these captives.
Now, Nebuchadnezzar wasn't just grabbing random people off the street. No, he was playing the long game. He told his chief official to pick the absolute cream of the crop, young men from royal and noble families. Just imagine being a teenager, picked out because you're smart, you look good, you have potential, only to be trained to serve the very king who just destroyed your home. And among these chosen few were 4 guys who stood out: Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah.
So, what happens next isn't your typical prisoner of war situation, not at all. It was this highly sophisticated 3-year re-education program. You could call it a psychological campaign, really, designed to just completely erase their Hebrew identity and turn them into loyal Babylonians. And the goal? Oh, it was crystal clear. Nebuchadnezzar wanted these brilliant young minds to start thinking like Babylonians, acting like Babylonians, and even feeling like Babylonians. He wanted them to forget their God, their culture, their whole history. This was a war for their minds.
So how'd they do it? Well, they had a 3-pronged attack. First, a brand new education. They were forced to learn the Chaldean language and literature, a curriculum jam-packed with Babylonian history, astronomy, and of course, their religious texts, all about astrology and predicting the future. Second, a new diet. They were given the king's very own rich food and wine every single day. And third, and this one is pretty sneaky, they were given new names. And this chart, wow, it really drives the point home. You see, their Hebrew names all honored their God. Daniel meant, "My judge is God." Azariah meant, "Jehovah has helped." But their new names? They were all linked to Babylonian gods like Bel, Aku, and Nebuchadnezzar. Think about that. Every time someone called them by their new name, it was a subtle little jab, a reminder that they now belong to a foreign king and his gods. Okay, so with all this pressure coming at them from every direction, they had a choice to make. Where were they going to draw the line? And you might be surprised to hear that their first big stand wasn't about the classes or the names. It was about what was on their dinner plate. This verse right here is the key to the whole story. This wasn't some loud public protest. Nope. It was a quiet, personal decision, something he determined in his heart. Daniel and his 3 friends decided this was one compromise they just couldn't make. He wouldn't pollute himself. But you might be thinking, what's the big deal about food? Well, for them, it was a huge deal for 3 big religious reasons. First off, the king's menu was almost certainly full of animals, like pigs, that were forbidden by their law. Second, the Babylonians didn't drain the blood from meat the way God's law commanded. And third, and this is a big one, it was standard practice to offer food to idols as part of a pagan ritual before it was served. So for these guys, eating that food would have been a direct act of disobedience to their God. Now, Daniel didn't just throw his tray on the floor and start a hunger strike. He was way smarter than that. The account says he kept requesting a different option from the official in charge. He was persistent for sure, but he was also respectful. He was trying to find a way to stay faithful without starting a massive confrontation. And this is where things get really clever. The chief official is worried, right? He's afraid he'll lose his own head if these young men start looking sick. So Daniel goes to a lower-level guardian with this bold, absolutely brilliant idea. Let's run a test. The plan was so simple, it was almost scientific. Daniel basically said, look, just test us for 10 days. Give us nothing but vegetables and water. At the end of the 10 days, you line us up next to the other guys eating the king's fancy food, and you be the judge. It was a huge risk, putting all their trust in the outcome. I mean, the contrast here couldn't be more stark. On one side, you have the royal treatment, the best food and wine the kingdom has to offer. And on the other side, a diet of what was likely pulse, beans, lentils, and water. To everyone else, this must have looked completely insane.
So what happened? Well, the result was just, wow. After only 10 days, the 4 of them didn't just look fine. They looked better, healthier, and even more well-fed than all the other guys who were feasting at the king's table. The test was a massive success. But here's the thing. The real reward wasn't just about their physical health. The account says that because they put their faith first, they were given something way more valuable: incredible knowledge, insight, and wisdom. And Daniel, specifically, got this unique gift to understand all kinds of visions and dreams, a skill that was about to become extremely important.
So, they passed that first test with flying colors. But the big one, the final exam, was still on the horizon. Everything they had been through for the last 3 years was building up to this moment.
3 years have gone by. The training program is officially over, and it was time for all the young men to be brought before the king himself for their final evaluation. Can you just imagine the pressure? You're standing in front of the most powerful man on the planet, the guy who conquered your home and holds your life in his hands. This was it, the ultimate test to see if the assimilation program had worked. And what the king found was just astounding. He found Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah to be 10 times better, not just a little smarter than the other students, 10 times better. Better than all of his own experienced advisors, the so-called wise men and magicians of Babylon. Their God-given wisdom just blew everyone else out of the water.
And this wasn't just some flash in the pan. This integrity became the story of their lives. They served at the highest levels of government for decades, with Daniel's career even lasting into the next great empire, the Persian Empire. They proved that faithfulness isn't just for a single test, but for an entire lifetime.
And that brings everything full circle, doesn't it? Their incredible stories started with what seemed like a small choice about food, but that one decision to be true in a little thing set the course for their entire lives and brought a huge reward. It kind of makes you think, right? What are the lines in the sand, the seemingly small choices that we're making today that are actually defining who we're going to become tomorrow?